Walker with New England Endurance Events. And tonight we're presenting the Tri Talks. This is the fourth session of our Tri Talks, and it's with Tim Snow. So Tim and I and my husband Andy go way back. Tim has been in triathlon since what, like 1998. Is that right, Tim?
Yes, yes, you
A
nailed that.
super long time. So Tim is with QT2 Systems, coaching collaborative, I should say. And Tim, you're kind of high up in there, and so you can explain that in just a minute. Tim is the person to go to for everything. QT2, he knows perfect. So he's a former pro. And he's an endurance coach, and he's been endurance coaching for over 15 years. I heard somewhere that Tim has participated in over 250 endurance events. So that is a lot. He has a lot of knowledge that you guys are gonna hear some really great, helpful stuff in just a little bit. He coaches from age groupers all the way through to pros. So he can answer almost any question. But in the meantime, we're gonna give him an opportunity to present. After he's done presenting, he will leave it up for Q&A. So if you guys have any questions as Tim is going through his presentation, if you want to throw it in chat, and then when it's time for Q&A, I'll read your question and then Tim can answer that. And then you all can see each other's questions in there. And sometimes that kind of helps to spur other things. So without further ado, Tim Snow.
All right, let me go about sharing my screen here, see if I can do this without fumbling too much. Hold on. Good? You can see my screen?
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. So, good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Snow, owner of QT2 Systems. That changed over in recent years. I coach, like Kathleen said, I coach triathletes for a living. It means I spend most of my days telling people that they are training too hard and sleeping too little, and they pay me to do that. And it's a great job. I've been with QT2 Systems since 2006. Probably been coaching since about 2003, like Kathleen said. Um, I I've been racing since 1998. My second ever triathlon was at the Hyannis Sprint 2. And I've been hooked for a long time. I spent a lot of time chasing George Bent around the course, and I have yet to catch him. But maybe someday. Um, so tonight I'm going to throw a bunch of training. No, tonight I'm not going to throw a bunch of training plans at you or drown you in data, though I am happy to go through stuff like that if you'd like. I'm going to try to keep this. I was unsure of the audience. I'm going to keep this at, say, in honor of our astronauts. I'm going to keep this at about a 50,000-foot view, maybe even further. But if you would want to get deeper into things, I'm happy to do that. What I want to do is give you a framework, a way of thinking about triathlon training that will help you to make your decision making smarter. Whether you are brand new to the sport or you've been doing it as long as Kathleen, Andy, and I, um, settle in. I hope that you will find this useful. But in the case that you don't, I have included a QR code on the last slide that links to a resource page that holds everything from tonight's talk. So at a bare minimum, you'll at least leave here with something. All right. Oop, hold on. There we go. All right. The humbling truth. By way of self reflection, who here has been injured training for a triathlon, had a race day that didn't come close to reflecting how hard you had trained, or trained consistently for months and wondered why you weren't getting faster? If you answered yes to any of those, and I would be a yes to each of those. What I can assure you is that it was very unlikely to have been the result of not working hard enough. In the vast majority of cases, the problem is something more specific than effort. All three of those outcomes, injury, bad race days, and performance plateaus, have the same root cause. Understanding it, understanding that root cause is worth more than any training plan that we could talk about tonight. Okay. The central problem. Triathlon is not three sports. It is one sport with three inputs competing for the same recovery resources. Many people often treat it like three separate training plans running in parallel. No pun intended there. They follow a swim program, they follow a bike program, they follow a run program, and then they wonder why they're exhausted all the time. The cumulative load of three sports is not the same as the load of any one of them. The competing adaptations from three different movement patterns are not the same as one. In the recovery math, the actual bandwidth your body has to repair and rebuild doesn't triple just because you added two more sports to your training repertoire. This is the central problem of triathlon training. So, a lot of what I do is to help athletes manage their training stress across three different disciplines, really, oftentimes four, right? Because we also have, well, five, because we have strength work, we have recovery, we have nutrition. So it's wide. All right. So understanding muscle recovery adaptations. Sit with this for a second. Your body does not get fitter from training. I'll say that again. Your body does not get fitter from training. It gets fitter from recovering from training. It gets fitter. I'll say it again. It gets fitter from recovering from training. Training is just the stimulus. It's the signal you send to your body that says, hey, we need to get better at this. But the actual rebuilding, the mitochondria, the muscle fibers, the cardiovascular adaptations, all of that happens during recovery, not during the workout. Think about the soreness you feel after a hard session. That's not fitness, that's breakdown. The fitness comes after. And if you never fully recover from the breakdown, the fitness never fully arrives. This should reframe everything for you because it means that the question isn't just how hard did I train? It's did I train hard and did I give myself the opportunity to actually recover from the training that you did? Switch slide. Here's a simple model for the stress adaptation cycle. Stress creates fatigue. Your body dips below baseline. You're temporarily worse than when you started. Then recovery happens. And the key is that your body doesn't just repair to where it was, it overbuilds slightly above baseline because it's preparing for the next time that that stress will be thrust upon it. That overshoot above baseline post recovery, that's the fitness. I think of it like a callus on your hand. Okay. Um, you stress the skin breaks down slightly, it heals back thicker than before. That thicker skin is the adaptation to the stress that you placed upon the hand. But, and this is the critical piece, the callus only forms if you allow the skin to recover. If you keep re-injuring that area on your hand, then you don't get a callus, you just get a wound that doesn't close. A lot of triathletes are walking around with training wounds that they keep reopening. A decent rhythm that can work is something along the lines of 2 to 4 weeks of progressive build, 1 week of reduced load. That's traditional periodization. It's typically not going to be the wrong answer. You don't take recovery because you earned a light week of training as a result of 3 good weeks, but because that's when the adaptation actually completes. That's when the adaptation actually completes at a cellular level. The recovery week isn't lost training. It's when the training effect actually plays out. And we've all done it. Every single one of us, I'm sure, skipped the recovery week. When we have done that, that's us leaving fitness on the table. A garden. What the heck does a garden have to do with triathlon training? Okay. So fitness is not a bank account where you make big deposits and live off the interest. It is more like a garden where consistent, appropriate water grows something real. One massive flooding followed by 2 weeks of drought, and you've got mud and dead plants. For example, three 45-minute runs per week for 12 weeks versus three 2-hour runs, then 2 weeks off because you've destroyed yourself. Same total volume, roughly, dramatically different adaptation. The consistent pattern keeps the signal on. The sporadic pattern spikes stress, creates damage, then goes quiet for so long the signal fades. For those of you who may have done a race or two or three and hit a plateau, this is often why. Not because you weren't working hard enough, but because you were chasing harder workouts instead of protecting the consistency you already had. It's kind of, I think of it as being pretty Aristotelian. You are what you consistently do. He never raced a triathlon, but he would have been a really good base phase athlete. One great training block does nothing. 12 consecutive good weeks changes your physiology. That's not motivational poster stuff. That's just how adaptation works. Easy days are essential. Are you guilty of training a bit too hard on easy days? I guarantee it. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. I see it. I see it literally every day, times I don't know how much, right? Um, that recovery run that's right at the top of recovery zone, that recovery ride that's right at the top of recovery zone. So what happens is over the course of I would say over the course of more than 20 years of coaching, I can say with supreme confidence that this is almost universal. Okay, the idea of not training easy enough to allow for true recovery. The easy run becomes a moderate run because it felt good or it was nice out. The recovery ride becomes a pretty solid effort because we finally had warm weather and sunny days, and your legs felt great. The problem is you have two primary energy systems that you're developing. Your aerobic base, think like a diesel engine, built at generally low intensity, and your high end capacity, think premium fuel, built at genuinely high intensity. The middle zone, too hard to allow recovery, not hard enough to drive meaningful adaptation, that develops neither system well. Minimal return on your training investment. When training in the gray middle, we call it, you are draining both tanks without filling either. It can be a tendency of age group athletes to spend 80% of their training in that gray middle zone. Elite triathletes, or any elite athlete really, flips that. 80% genuinely easy, 20% genuinely hard. By way of self reflection, how many of you have gone out for an easy run and gradually realized that it wasn't very easy at all? I, I'll probably do it tomorrow. um, and so here's the test. Easy means you can hold a full conversation, not a clipped, breathless one, a real one. If you can't complete a full sentence without pausing to breathe, you're not in the easy zone. You're in the zone that costs you without paying you back. The three-sport balancing act, and this is a lot of why I get paid, is to help athletes balance those three sports, right? Those three demands. So you want to think of your triathlon performance as a chain. The chain strength is determined by its weakest link, not the average of all the links, not the strongest link, the weakest one. You can make your strongest links stronger all day long. Add another bike interval workout. Do an extra long run. The chain still breaks at the same place. Do you know where your weakest link is in triathlon? And I don't mean where you feel the worst in isolation. I mean where you're losing the most ground relative to your potential across the entire race. The limiter reveals itself in the transitions, not just in the split times. If your swim exit leaves you so depleted that your bike is compromised, swimming might be your limiter, even if you don't feel terrible in the water. If you come off the bike and your legs are wrecked, the bike is telling you something. Before you add another hard session to your strongest discipline, ask yourself, what would happen to my race if I invested this time in my weakest link instead of my strongest? Because we like to do what we are good at. And so if we are a strong cyclist or a strong runner, we like when we have extra time or extra place to spend training stress, we tend to place it in the area that we enjoy doing, that we're the best at. And we really need to reframe that, rethink that a little bit. Not that we should necessarily be spending extra time at the same time. All right, swim technique first. Swimming. This is something that I'll frame this slide first by saying none of us is limited in the water by our fitness. Each of us is limited in the water by our relationship with the water. If you want to get faster in the water, you must change your relationship with the water. So swimming is the weird uncle of the three sports. It follows different rules. Most endurance athletes are primarily fitness limited. Run more, get fitter, run faster. The swim doesn't work that way, at least not for most of us. Swimming is technique limited before it's fitness limited. You can be aerobically fit enough to run a 4 hour marathon and still be a slow, inefficient swimmer because swimming is fundamentally a skill sport. Not different from a very strong or muscular golfer who looks like they can drive the ball 300 yards, but shanks it every time off into the woods because they have a terrible swing or connection to the ball. What this means, pouring more volume into a broken stroke makes you better at swimming badly. More yards of more yards of poor mechanics is just more practice of bad habits. Frequency beats volume in the water. Three 30-minute swims per week will produce a better result. Three 30-minute swims where you are fresh and able to practice good technique will beat any amount of long swimming where you fade into fatigue and begin practicing poor technique. Because swimming technique is a neurological adaptation. You have to do it over and over and over again. And that's why so many of us are so limited in the water by poor technique. It's because we have done it over and over and over again in the wrong way. So it requires repetition at manageable doses, not just grinding. And also, just from a technique standpoint, I see this all the time. There's a lot of noise out there about swim technique. Wait, should I put my hand? Should I enter my hand here or here, here, here? What should it look like? We spend a lot of time focused on where our hand placement should be, and there's all kinds of toys. There's pull buoys, there's paddles, there's fins, there's snorkels, there's bands, and I see people use them. I see people use all of them at the same time, which is particularly funny. But we spend a lot of time around the noise and listening to the noise, and we kind of miss out on probably the number one thing that's holding almost all of us back in the water, and that is your horizontal alignment in the water. Okay. Most of us swim down the lane in some form of this. I see it all the time. I just left the pool, I saw it. And somebody swimming down the lane like a barge. Okay. And if you can bring that to be horizontal, you're going to be a completely different athlete, completely different swimmer. And that takes very limited work. Okay. We are and you can tell the people who struggle with this the most. They're the ones who oftentimes default to throwing the pull buoy in. Okay, a pull buoy, that is a misappropriation or a misuse of a pull buoy. A pull buoy being that buoy that looks like an eight that you put between your legs. And what that is supposed to be is something that turns off your kick so that you can focus on your catch and pull. What triathletes tend to do is use it as a crutch or a band-aid to bring their butt up, bring their feet up. Okay. And that is a misuse. And if you find yourself being somebody who tends to default to the pull buoy or is significantly faster when swimming with a pull buoy, then I would highly recommend that you take some time, um, and and invest your time in working on your horizontal alignment in the water. Okay, that is something you can become a better swimmer tomorrow. Tomorrow, if you focus on your horizontal alignment in the water, that's the number one thing that I see. All right, building a. Is this in the way? Let me go over here. Is that okay? Building a strong aerobic base. The bike is where triathlons are decided. Not always where they're won, but almost always where they're lost. Two ways the bike hurts athletes. First, undercooked fitness. An athlete hasn't built enough aerobic base on the bike, so they're working way too hard at race pace and they arrive at T2 already well in debt. Second, poor pacing. They've actually done the training, they have the fitness, and then they go out too hard in the first third of the ride, spending matches they're going to need desperately on the run. One of the worst things that we do as an industry Kathleen, Andy, you're guilty of it. We call sprint triathlons sprints. Okay. They are not sprints. They absolutely are not sprints. They are probably 98% aerobic, right? But we get on a bike and we think we're in a sprint triathlon, so we have to go, 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 right? And we are just blowing through effort that should be significantly easier, okay? And that it becomes a pacing problem. Um, but both of these things have the same root cause, not knowing, not understanding what sustainable effort actually feels like. Okay, and that's where I blame the name of a triathlon, but it's an industry thing, right? And when you call something a sprint, you approach it like it's a sprint, and it ain't a sprint. Um, so that's a training problem, not a willpower problem. A well-paced bike sets up a strong run. An overly aggressive bike sets the stage for a shuffle. And I think we have all at some point or another probably experienced a survival shuffle on a run course, depending upon the race distance. And where your legs they feel like they belong to someone else, and you're just trying to make it to the next mile marker with some shred of dignity intact. We often place the blame on an underdeveloped run, when in actuality it has a lot more to do with an overpaced bike. And we have these bikes. They cost an absolute boatload of money. We want to ride them fast, right? But really, you're in a triathlon. You should ride them smart. Okay, and it's not the fastest bike split that wins the race. It's the fastest overall triathlon time that wins the race. Oh, hold on. Oh, there we go. Oh, hold on. Let's bring the crew back over here. I'm gonna go right in the middle, right down the middle. Managing running injury risk. Running is the most mechanically punishing of the three disciplines in triathlon, and it's even more punishing when you're doing off this after the swim and bike, particularly the bike, because you are fatigued, and so your mechanics are breaking down, and you're practicing bad form. That is where injury can occur. Um, every step is 2 to 3 times your body weight per stride in terms of force over thousands of strides. Let's say you're taking 90 steps a minute on each leg, at 2 to 3 times your body weight, for half an hour, 40 minutes. That's a lot of force. Okay. And those legs are already loaded from everything that came before it from the bike, so it's not a trivial ask. Running is the last discipline I would ever want anyone to add volume to, and the first one I would want somebody to cut volume from if they're feeling under recovered. Okay, so if you're feeling fresh, don't add volume to the run. If you're feeling wrecked, take volume from the run. Okay, so if you want to add workouts, never add to the run. If you feel like you need to cut workouts, cut them from the run. Okay, you will get gain, you will get benefit, or you won't lose as much by spending more time or ample time on the bike that you will risk in terms of potentially injuring yourself in running. Okay. Um, yeah, and that's the thing. Running is one of those things that where an injury can stop everything. Okay. If you can't run, you often running injuries can often affect the bike. And a swim injury, you can typically adapt. A bike injury very rarely happens. So a running injury can put your entire season at risk. So really, really, really be careful with the running. If you ever have to cut from anywhere, take it from the running. The other thing about the run in the triathlon it's a fundamentally different physiological event than a standalone run. I oftentimes will hear athletes want to be as fast in a triathlon run as they are in a standalone run, and that dog don't hunt, right? That's your open run fitness, the 5K or the 10K that you can run fresh on a Saturday or Sunday morning. That's a ceiling of your performance. Okay. What you can actually run off the bike is the floor. Okay. And those two numbers are not going to be the same for most athletes. And if they are, then you're probably doing something wrong on the bike. You're probably underriding the bike for sure. And that's where we incorporate brick training. So a brick, a triathlon brick, is going out for a bike and then immediately into a run. Your legs feel like bricks. Okay, hence the name. That's running off the bike, even if short, teaches your body to make that transition from bike to run. It's not optional. It's not a nice to have. It's how you specifically train the skill of running on fatigued legs, which is which is the only running that happens in triathlon. So you have your true speed potential, which is your standalone open run time. And then you have what you can run off the bike. So this is your ceiling, this is your floor. And the goal is to aim to bring them as close to one another as possible. And how do you do that? You do that by practicing running off the bike and with bricks. All right, hold on. I'm lost here. Oh, hold on. All right, key training variables. Focusing on frequency and quality. We've covered the framework. Now the actual levers. There are hundreds of training variables. Most of them are just noise. Okay, at the level most athletes are operating at. Here's what actually moves the needle: frequency over duration. 3 45-minute sessions beats 1 2-hour session. Protect your frequency before you protect the length of any individual workout. One quality session per sport per week. That's it. One per sport per week. Okay. More than that, and you're exceeding your recovery, you're probably exceeding your recovery bandwidth. Because remember, it's not the fitness. The fitness is not built from the training. The fitness is built from the recovery from the training. So if you are typically doing more than, if you're exceeding more than one key session per week per sport, then you are probably eating to your ability to recover from those sessions. Okay, and just digging yourself a hole. When training is going well, you feel good. The instinct is to add more hard sessions. Resist that feeling. Feeling good is a result of the training working. Adding more hard sessions at that point only spends the gains before they're able to compound. Sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. It is legal doping. Okay. Sleep is where your body creates growth hormone. Okay. And recovery. Okay. It is not a lifestyle preference. It is a physiological requirement. I am not the best sleeper, I will admit that, but and hence my recovery is oftentimes greatly diminished as a result. But it is something that we must take, and oftentimes our squeezing in training into already busy lives, we steal from our sleep in order to be able to fit in the training. Okay, and that's what's it called, robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. So cutting sleep to fit in more training is the single most counterproductive thing an athlete can do. You are literally trading the mechanism of adaptation for more stress stimulus. And fueling during your sessions, not after too, but not only after, during. Any session that is over 60 minutes needs carbohydrate intake mid-session. Okay. Every workout you do is, even if it's easy, okay, is digging a hole into your muscle glycogen stores. Okay. And I said I wasn't going to get into numbers, but I'm gonna creep into numbers real quick. But any most of us, say a 160-pound male, 100, a 35-pound female, probably has somewhere in the range of 1,200 to 1,600 calories of muscle glycogen in their system at any given moment. Okay. No, no, no. When fully carbo loaded. I'm sorry. When fully carbo loaded. At any given moment, they're probably walking around with half of that. Okay. At the same time that is true, we probably have somewhere between 55,000 and 75,000 calories of fat on our person at any moment. Okay. We have this infinite fuel source, uh, essentially, of fat, okay, which we use. We absolutely use it. And we have a very, very, very finite uh, uh, amount of muscle glycogen in our system. So we need to make sure that we replace that muscle glycogen after or during and after every single workout. Okay. If you don't, you will eventually, you're basically withdrawing from your fueling account. And you will start to become run down. You'll experience a bonk. Um, uh, but generally you'll end up with very low energy levels. And a lot of us, a lot of people can tend to skimp in that area, and that is absolutely an area we should not be skimping. Absolutely not, should not be skimping. We do not have enough of it on our person to support the stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis. Okay, never ever ever skimp from fueling. Um, and then lastly on this, if your long rides or your bricks are wrecking you for the rest of the day, and it leaves you kind of feeling run down all day, then you can almost always point to underfueling. It typically has less to do with not being able to handle the training load itself. It's more being underfueled. Training and racing and fueling, it's really a chemistry problem. If you give your, for the most part, if you, as long as you're maintaining a well considered, well thought out, sensible training program, okay, that is within your limits, or within your bounds. If executing that really comes down to making sure you give yourself the fuel to be able to do it. Okay, if you give yourself the fuel, you'll be able to do it. And if you don't, then you will break down over time. Okay, and but typically speaking, if you go out for a long ride and a run after on a Saturday, and then the rest of the day you are just shelled, okay, you didn't feel the workout. You just simply didn't do it. And I like to set the window of 30 minutes before, up until at least an hour after the workout. But typically, the 30 minutes before the workout begins, the workout itself, and then some window of time after the workout that's about equal to the workout. Okay. You should be very, very carb centric in that time frame. Very, very carb centric. In terms of uh, replacing the muscle glycogen and then making sure you top it back off. Okay, because you just simply don't have enough. It is a finite source. All right, let me go back to my thing here. All right, red flags, listening to your body. How many of us have pushed through a week where our body was pretty clearly telling us to back off? I had definitely have 100%. This is pretty universal. Those aren't signals. Those Our body telling us to back off it's not a signal of weakness. Okay, it is a communication to us. Your body is running a pretty sophisticated monitoring system, and it's sending you pretty clear messages. I am a firm believer that, if for the most part, if your body sends these very, very subtle, um, subliminal messaging to you. If you're ever kind of in the mood all of a sudden for a salty snack, right? Probably means you're running low on sodium. If you're ever in the mood all of a sudden for a steak, it probably means you're starting to run low on iron. And if your body is starting to send you little niggles and stuff like that, it's probably that you're you're burning the you're under recovering. You're not giving yourself ample time for recovery. Okay. So the question is, your body is sending you messages. Are you listening? Are you listening to those messages, or do you override those messages? So elevated resting heart rate, 5 to 7 beats above your normal baseline. Sleep quality, if that's degrading, even though you're walking around exhausted. Persistent soreness that doesn't clear between sessions. Workouts that normally feel manageable, suddenly feeling hard at the same effort. Motivation that drops significantly. And I want to be here specific. This with motivation most triathletes. If motivation is waning, we are not lazy people. We typically don't need to be kicked in the ass to do our stuff. Okay. If that's waning, then that's typically your nervous system trying to self-protect. Okay. It's a signal. Are you getting sick more often than usual? That's usually a direct physiological consequence of chronic overload. Any one of these alone is at least a yellow flag. Multiple of these at once is a red flag. And why this matters, beyond just feeling bad, ignoring these signals is exactly how consistency gets broken. Okay. The number one thing I hope that you'll, well, I shouldn't say the number one thing, but a major theme that I hope you'll take away from tonight is that consistency is king. Okay. Consistency is king and queen. Okay. And like I said, it's Aristotelian that we are what we habitually do, or what we consistently do. So ignoring those signals, so these kinds of red flags, yellow flags that turn to red flags, that's how that consistency breaks. It can lead to injury and forced time off and or burnout. Um, and they typically all start with little subtle signals that we do a really good job of overriding. So just keep in mind, your body's constantly giving you data. It's your job to make sure that you're listening to it. The importance of consistency. Hold on. I like this picture. That's a good picture. Um, I wish I could grow a beard like that, but I that would never happen. That probably took in 3 days. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Adaptation cycles, three sport balance, training variables, red flags. If you forget everything else, and I'm sure that some of you are going to immediately open Strava and begin mapping out an aggressive training week, I hope that you'll leave with one thing. Do less than you think you need to, more consistently than you think you can. The first half of that. The limiting factor in triathlon training is almost never effort. Rarely can a triathlete be accused of lack of effort. The limiting factor is almost always recovery. And recovery need is determined by how much stress you accumulated, not how heroic any single session was. Consistency. Consistency is boring. There's no version of it that gets Strava kudos or feels impressive in the moment. It's just showing up, doing the work at the right intensity level, recovering and doing it again, day after day, week after week, month after month. It doesn't feel like progress in the moment. It feels like maintenance. And then one day you look back at 12 consecutive good weeks and realize your physiology has quietly changed beneath you. Remember how we started tonight? Injury. How many of us have fallen into injury or bad race days or training without seeing improvement? More often than not, these are issues with consistency in disguise. Injury kills consistency. Bad race days often come from a base that wasn't consistent enough. Performance plateaus happen when athletes keep disrupting their consistency by chasing harder workouts. The best training plan is not the most sophisticated one. It's the one that you can execute week after week without breaking down. Find that plan, protect it, and trust the process enough to allow that adaptation to happen. I'm happy to take any questions. And just to go back on the idea of the best training plan is not the most sophisticated one. It's the one that you can execute. Work with, in talking with a physiologist, we were having I'll draw a parallel. We were having a conversation about the best gel or the best sports drink, right? Because we have a lot of noise in this arena. We have all these different options of gels and sports drinks and all that. And the the answer to that is the one you'll take, the one you'll drink, right? Um, and because that's you'll keep fueling yourself, right? But if you try to find the one that has the perfect profile, but you hate it, and when you're under stress, you won't use it. Okay, and that's kind of a similar type thing. The best training plan is the one you'll do. Okay, day after day, week after week, month after month after month. Okay, so I'm happy to take any questions. There's a QR code on the next slide that links to a full resource page from tonight. I have to find the thing. Let me get myself out of the way. So again, do less more consistently.
This
Put
was
me in some chat.
excellent, Tim. Thank you. We'll leave your QR code up for just another minute, and I'm gonna read questions to you from the chat. We've got a few of those. Okay. All right. We've given everyone a chance to use the QR code if they need it. Do you want to go ahead and unshare?
Oh,
All right, there we go. Well, thanks, Tim. That was really helpful. And I'm so sorry. I did know it and I had forgotten that you are now the owner of QT2,
That's okay. That's I don't need to know
which
that.
is a
I don't.
huge thing, and I blew that. So I apologize for that. So this
Mm-mm.
was really helpful. I see we do have some questions in chat, so I'm gonna read those to you, and then I'm sure that's gonna bring up some more questions. I got a question or so myself. So before we get into actual questions, Dave asked that you tell the group your swimming story and what helped you become a better swimmer.
Which swimming story? I've been doing this
I
for
don't know, David, what
25 years.
swimming story?
I actually, while he answers that one, I learned to swim by reading a book, believe it or not. The When I first started swimming, well, we didn't have the internet, and I read the book Total Immersion, which became a much larger program. But essentially, the big focus in Total Immersion is being a long, well balanced vessel. Okay, long vessels go fast, but the most basic skill, and I like anything that I would have talked about tonight or could talk about at any time. A lot of things come back amongst all the noise. A lot of things come back to first principles, right? And one of the very first principles in the total immersion program, trying to see if I don't think I had the book anymore. One of the first principles in the total immersion program is to become horizontal in the water. So a lot of focus on how to set that balance point in the water. And I was doing it tonight, right? So, like I never don't work on it. It's the key. Put yourself in position to go fast, then go fast.
I agree. That's my thing. I'll swimming long. I might not swim for 90 minutes, certainly, but all my 30-minute swims stay horizontal. So along those same lines, and Herb asks, horizontal position is a challenge to correct. Is there a
Mm.
process or approach like drills or something like that that would help you achieve that?
So I have two primary drills that I go to. The very first drill I call press your buoy. It is, I'll try to describe it as best I can. So push off the wall. So facing the water, push off the wall, and you're going to be arms at your side. You're going to be kicking down to the other end of the pool. Now, this is an important factor. Okay. Eyes forward. Okay. Forward and down, but forward and down, not down and not forward, forward and down at, like, I'll say, a 60-degree angle. Okay. Water level just above the goggle line. Okay. And the reason why that's important, I'll talk about that in a second. You're kicking down to the pool, face forward. Okay. And at some point, you're going to need to breathe. Okay. When you need to breathe, you need to lift your face up in front of you. Okay. And when you faced it, you just made a funny face when I said that, right? What's going to happen when you lift your face up in front of you? Your feet are going to sink. Okay. Now that's good. That's good because that's an opportunity. Okay. Now what you need to do, and that's a natural thing. Your feet should sink. You've thrown off the lever, right? So now you need to get yourself back to horizontal. Okay. But here's the rule. The rule is you have to bring your face back to the water. Okay, and you cannot bury your head. Okay, you must put the water line back to just above your goggles. How are you going to do that? Okay, you're going to do that by pressing your buoy. Your chest is your buoy. Okay, and you press the buoy against the water. It brings the feet up. Okay, and you just keep doing that, and eventually you start to get that feeling in your chest of applying a pressure to the water. And that very simple drill solve I shouldn't say solve it doesn't solve anything because you will lose it after a while, and you have to keep practicing it, but that very simple drill creates big improvement very quickly.
Great, thanks.
but,
That's a big
but
help.
you'll suck at it. You will. Okay, and that's good because that's opportunity. That means there's something, that's a dial that you get to turn.
That was Herb's question. I'm gonna ask my own question because swimming is always, it's a challenge for most of us, right? When I'm trying to stay horizontal in the water swims while I'm swimming, I'm thinking about what parts of my body can I feel air? And I'm
Mhm,
like, oh, if I can feel air in my butt, that means it's not below the water.
mhm.
So is that horizontal? Is that too, like, is that now too much? Kathleen's got her butt in the air, or is that like, oh, all right, if your butt's in the air and you can feel that there's, no water at the crown of your head because, that's you've got your head in your face in the water, is that would that give you the horizontal um
If
position?
you can feel your butt in the air, that's a good problem to have. Like if you have to then solve that problem, like let's get there. Okay. You look watch the Olympic swimmers, right? And what can you oftentimes see is their heels out of the water. Okay. I bet you there's not a person on this call that whose heels are out of the water when they're swimming, right? So that I mean that's the aim. But the way to create that, the way to get that is to get the lever up front, right? Because the it's not it's you're not the lever point is off, right? I'm no physicist, but we need to apply force up here to bring that lengthwise up, right?
Great. Thank you. That's super helpful. All right. So Scott asked, or Scott says, he's a super slow runner. I hear you, Scott. Who wants to get faster? Is there a good strategy to start interval training?
Um, is there a good strategy to start interval training? First question is should you, right? The I would take a good look at first run mechanics. Okay, that might be a very early place. So one. Okay, let me reframe. Interval training, not necessarily for the sake of physiological fitness. It may not be the thing that does it, but interval training for the sake of um, practicing better running form. Okay, can go a long way. So I guess I would. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
the most of us who suffer with poor running mechanics, we don't get an opportunity to fix them. So I would do the interval training, but make sure you frame it from the perspective of working on not working on the physiology piece because you don't know if that's the right answer or not. Okay, but it is an excellent opportunity for you to run in a way that is probably more natural actually more natural in terms of getting faster and hopefully and work to translate that into your more steady state running because chances are for the races that you'll do, again, this is where the word sprint is problematic. Like you're not going to be doing any, physiologically speaking, you're not going to touch um, those energy systems in any race, any race, right? I mean, you may touch it, but you're only going to touch it. It's going to be more over the carryover from uh, the in terms of the mechanics and how you can translate that into this more steady state running. If that I hope that helps. So yes to interval training, but no to the reason why, which is fitness development and more towards mechanics.
Got it. Thanks.
No.
All right. So we have a follow-up question to that. That was a great question, Scott. So what are the most common issues with running mechanics to watch out for?
Well, let's see. So, um, okay, think of it from a power development. So, running has like three dimensions to it, really. Like you have your vertical component, you have your horizontal component, and then you have this rotational component to it. And so, probably from a running mechanics standpoint, up and down, too much vertical relative to the horizontal. And again, this can be a really good place where a little bit of intensity training, not for the sake of the physiology, but for the sake of the form, can be good. To kind of lower that to make sure that as much of the force that we're creating when we run when we're running is spent driving us forward and to limit the amount of force that is up and down. One thing about um, if you run on a treadmill, okay, treadmill running is funny because so if you were to put a power meter on your running shoe, um, the little stride, that stride measures something called form power ratio, and form power ratio. Um, Basically the amount of power produced that is I don't call it wasted, spent going up and down vertically. Okay. And when you run on a treadmill, that tends to be higher than when you run outside. And the reason why is because I shouldn't say it's the reason why, I don't know that, but one theory would be that we kind of trick ourselves into applying more vertical component because more belt goes beneath us, the more time we spend in the air, right? So we can actually run faster on a treadmill if we spend more time in the air. And so I think be careful. I get, but one thing that be careful if you run on a treadmill, but then that lends itself to the idea that you want to really be sensitive to make sure that you are driving yourself forward. Okay. So another to that end, as we get older, that form power ratio that I'm talking about, that vertical component, that increases. Okay. So body work, mobility, all that kind of stuff. I was running on a college track the other day, and the team was doing all these mobility movements, and I wanted to say to them, they were just these 20-year-old kids. I wanted to say, guys, keep doing that because I do that too. The problem is that I skipped about 25 years of doing it, and everything's tightening up, right? And so you want to try to maintain as much of that fluidity and range of motion as humanly possible. And what do we do most of the time? We sit at desks, right? That ain't helping, right? So as much of that as possible.
That is awesome. And you were like talking directly to Andy and talking about the treadmill and like just spending as much time up and then letting the treadmill get,
Oh,
does all the,
one more thing
go
about
ahead.
that to that end, right? As I think about it, right? So the same in as in the pool, where this is your buoy in terms of pressing down. When running, one key thing is to drive your chest forward. Okay, you want to create an anabolic state, right? Strong, right? One thing that we as runners do, and we can see it when as we get fatigued, is we become catabolic, right? We kind of fold on ourselves. You can see this oftentimes in an Ironman later in the race. Somebody the body does this weird shape thing that starts to look like this, and the eyes can control that, right? So have your eyes just like driving on the highway. Look, 100 yards up the road and feel that chest out forward. If your eyes start dropping to the in front of you, your body is going to fold on itself.
Thanks. That really helps. Herb has another question, but I don't want to forget. I want to ask one thing before I forget because I'm old. You were talking about like in running, we do as we get older, particularly, we tend to kind of stiffen up. So do you recommend stretching? And if so, how, when?
Do I recommend it? Sure. Do I do
Yeah,
it?
I mean,
No.
well, because
Yeah,
some people
yeah.
that we know don't stretch at all.
I would. It gets back to that mobility thing. It's very rarely is it going to be the wrong answer, right? It's. Yeah, I don't think that you necessarily have to stretch all the time. Okay. But we should be the moment we feel anything that may not be right, we should go into a very acute protocol of stretching and that kind of work to clean that up as quickly as possible. Now, you can be proactive with it and do it in an ongoing way to try to offset as much of those things popping up as possible. Or you can wait till a little hint of them pops up and then go into this, a very acute protocol. Um, I guess it's, pick your poison, right? Um, yeah, that's
Great.
the other
That's
thing is
helpful.
strength, right? As we get older, lean muscle mass becomes a commodity, and um, we don't have a fix for that. And so we should be in the gym, moving weights.
Okay. Thanks. That's super helpful. So, Herb asked, we're still in the running. Do you recommend focusing on running cadence?
Um, yeah, but I don't recommend chasing a number. You'll get hurt. I recommend aiming to, to get a good sense of what your running cadence is, and then work to adjust it. I would say it's somewhere between 85 and 95. Like your running cadence will oftentimes match your biking cadence. And so 85 to 95, somewhere in there, what's natural. And if you want to increase it a bit more, do it um, one step per minute at a time, right? Don't just try to take more steps. Okay, you'll end up injuring your hip flexors. Just kind of, and probably one of the better ways to do that would be to focus on, again, the chest and getting a little bit of a forward lean to your running. That will probably, I think, what's that called? Chi running. That will help you to take more steps. Um, but don't do anything overnight, because that could be a problem. Mm-mm.
Sorry, dog was barking before.
Oh.
So, sorry, one more question. Um, Sorry, now I hear an echo. The David asked, recommend a smart brick workout, say 12-mile bike, 3-mile run. Your thoughts?
I didn't get the question. Is
Okay,
that
we'll
is
try it
that a
again.
smart brick pro?
So if could you recommend a smart brick workout? Let's say 12-mile bike, 3-mile run. Like, does that sound
Oh, yeah, sure, that's reasonable.
perfect?
And then I wouldn't go trying to replicate a race on your own. That would be too stressful. I would probably, and what I mean by that is in terms of racing intensity. But what you want to do is finish a ride, say that 12-minute ride, finish on the stronger side. Okay. You don't have to be sprinting in or anything like that. And then fuel, right? Transition quickly, but not, you don't have to be a crazy person, right? Transition quickly. Like, you get on a bike, I'm going for a run. And not I'm get off the bike and I'm gonna lay around for a while, then maybe go for a run later. Okay. Also, you don't need to be like bursting out your front door running. Get off the bike, go for a run, and hit, say, the first, if you're going to do a 3-mile run, hit the first quarter to 800, quarter mile to half mile at something resembling a race intensity, and then settle back. Okay. But consciously do it. Okay. Conscious is go out strong. I'm not going to say go out hard. I'm going to say go out strong. Okay. That's a key word. And then make a decision. Okay, I'm going to back off now. Okay. Um, and they'll just say on the way out the door, say, I'm going to go out strong until, Judy's house. Right. And then back off. And the reason why I say consciously back off is because you don't want to create like a mental dynamic of fading. Okay, you want to make the choice that this has a purpose. This going out strong has a purpose, and then when my purpose is over, I'm doing something else.
Great, thanks. And how many times a week would you suggest doing a brick workout?
Um, well, at least once. I can tend to do well in the old days. At least once, say up to three. If you're gonna do a long, if you're gonna do a long run, and you have a ride that day, I would recommend that you do the long run off of the ride. And the ride, what I mean by ride is like an easy ride. Let the run be the focus of the day, because it's not about necessarily, you know, being able to run. Can you run on tired legs? The way I like to think about it is I have like a key bike ride, and then I'll do a run off of that, and then I have my long ride, and then I do a run off of that. And then I have my long run and I do a little ride before that. That would be a structure that I would recommend. That's at the high level. That's the ceiling.
That's great. I think that's the first time that I've heard anyone explain it quite that way. Like, okay, you're going to do it, but you're going to do either a short run, short ride, whatever it is, depending on what your focus is. So,
Mhm.
so really helpful, Tim. Our time is up. We've had some really great questions, and we've had such expert advice from you. We really appreciate your time, Tim, and thank you all for being on this call and for your great questions. Anyone that wants to go back and, Tim had so much great information. It's possible that you're going to want to go back and say, wait, what did he say about, whatever it was? So you can find that on New England Endurance Events YouTube page. Just put in New England Endurance Events, and you're going to see this the recording of this session there tomorrow by tomorrow afternoon. I'll get it up before lunchtime. Um, so, and it's always there if you've got anybody else that has missed tonight and you want to say you missed a great, great session, you can send them there and they'll be able to see all that we're seeing here. So, thanks so much, Tim. Thank you all for being on. I hope you have a great night and a great season.
Thank you.